caught up in all the hype. And if Tupac came back from the dead now to hear this interview, he would agree. They got caught up.
Me and Pac went in the studio and did a song together. And then them little dudes.
Outlaws.
Yeah.
Outlaws.
They came, like, as soon as we got there, they came up to Pac talking about, yo, Lauryn Hill dissed you, Mobb Deep dissed you, this and that, and da. So then Pac went in the studio and started writing about, I think it might have been that, I think it was him.
Yeah. It started with a confession that almost no one expected. In a quiet interview moment, KRS-One leaned back, lowered his voice, and admitted something that would change how fans understood one of hip-hop's most mythologized rivalries. He said the so-called tension between Big Daddy Kane and Tupac wasn't real. It wasn't personal. It was manufactured. And if Pac were alive today, KRS insisted, even he would admit they had all been caught up in the hype. That one phrase, caught up, was more than just commentary. It was a reflection of the larger machine that devoured artists in the 1990s, spinning narratives that weren't just untrue, but dangerous. So how did Kane and Pac, two men who respected each other, get woven into a story of conflict they never asked to be part of? The answer, as always, leads back to Suge Knight. The industry in the mid-90s thrived on division. East Coast versus West Coast wasn't just a rivalry. It was a product. It sold magazines, boosted television ratings, and drove record sales higher than ever. And while fans consumed it like fire, artists like Tupac became both the face and the victim of that narrative. Kane, meanwhile, refused to play the game. He wasn't interested in being anyone's pawn. But refusing Suge Knight came with consequences, some seen, some hidden. It began when Kane was approached about joining Death Row East.
Signed you to Death Row East at one point?
Yeah.
What happened with that?
He called and said, Suge trying to, build a Death Row East, man. I think it might be a good look for you. So I went out there, and like when I walked in, these two big ass Rockwallers came, and then Suge, he comes out the back. They come running around, sniffing around me and stuff, sits down with his cigar, sits his cigar down and does this. And both the dogs ran and sat down next to him. So I'm like, okay, this one of them meetings. He said, well, what you want?
Imagine it. Suge Knight expanding his empire into New York, handpicking one of Brooklyn's most respected lyricists to carry the banner. The offer came with staggering promises. $500,000, maybe even $1 million advance. To Kane, though, the pitch didn't feel like opportunity. It felt like a trap. He later described the meeting like something out of a gangster film. Cigar smoke, the trained dogs sitting at command, Suge leaning back, testing him, dangling cash like bait. I can give you $100,000 in the morning, Suge offered casually, no paperwork, no conditions. That's when Kane knew he was dealing with something darker than music. He switched his flight, left town at dawn, and never looked back. But walking away didn't erase him from the story. On the contrary, it cemented his role as the man who refused Suge. And once the media got hold of that narrative, neutrality became its own kind of headline. Kane was painted as someone not taking sides while the rest of the industry burned. And Suge, who thrived on narrative control, knew even neutrality could be twisted into conflict. What fans never saw was the private respect between Kane and Tupac. Behind closed doors, there were conversations, unrecorded collaborations, and a shared understanding rooted in something deeper than music. Both men had ties to the philosophy of the 5% Nation. For Kane, it had been foundational since the early 80s, shaping his lyrics with mathematics and self-knowledge. For Tupac, it came through his mother's activism and his years absorbing Black revolutionary teachings. Though he was never formally initiated, Pac's worldview echoed the same ideas. Self-awareness, empowerment, the fight against oppression. In that shared philosophy, Kane and Pac recognized each other not as rivals, but as reflections. Still, once Tupac joined Death Row, neutrality was no longer an option. Suge had a flagship artist, and that artist was expected to embody the East Coast-West Coast divide. From the moment Suge bailed Pac out of prison, the narrative tightened its grip. Pac, already fiery and outspoken, became the perfect lightning rod for a rivalry that made other people rich. Every word was amplified. Every rumor turned into a headline. KRS-One later said the truth was clear. Suge manipulated the industry, and the industry manipulated the artists. It wasn't just Suge, of course. Executives A&Rs and media outlets all had stakes in the drama. But Suge had the most visible hand, and Pac was the one caught in his game. Big Daddy Kane, meanwhile, continued to defend Tupac's artistry. Critics dismissed Pac as less lyrical, but Kane pushed back hard. He called Pac a lyricist, not because of technical wordplay, but because of his ability to touch people's souls. "You have to be lyrical to make someone feel like you know their pain," Kane said in one interview. For him, Pac's writing was proof that lyricism wasn't just about rhyme density, it was about emotional truth, and he would never let that be dismissed. Some fans know the story of an unreleased collaboration between the two. Wherever you are. It never dropped officially, but those who've heard it know Pac held his own beside Kane, one of the most respected lyricists alive. That track alone shatters the myth that Kane and Pac were adversaries. They weren't. They shared microphones, philosophies, and mutual admiration. The feud was the invention of outsiders. But this invention had real consequences. Once the East Coast-West Coast war was in full swing, it wasn't just words anymore. It became deadly. Our artists were shot, cities were divided. Fans took sides in conflicts that the artists themselves didn't always believe in. Kane's decision to walk away from Death Row East might have saved him from being swallowed by that machine. For Pac, the entanglement was inescapable. His brand, his image, even his safety were tied to a war he never fully controlled. And looking back, KRS-One's words feel prophetic. If Pac could hear this now, he would admit it. He was caught up in the hype, and they all were. Biggie, Kane, even KRS himself. It raises the question how much of what we think we know about hip-hop history is true, and how much is constructed. Suge's brilliance, if you can call it that, was in realizing that perception was as valuable as record sales. Conflict could be scripted, tension could be manufactured. And when artists resisted, even their resistance could be twisted into another chapter of the story. Kane didn't want to be part of the game, but his refusal became its own plotline. Tupac wanted to be a revolutionary, but his fiery nature was weaponized into drama that outlived him. And yet, beneath all the manipulation, the respect was real. Kane admired Pac's raw honesty. Pac recognized Kane's discipline and artistry. They shared conversations about philosophy and culture that no magazine cover would ever print. Those moments never trended, never made headlines, but they mattered. They showed that beneath the noise, two men on opposite coasts could still see each other clearly. If you've made it this far into the story, you're the kind of person who wants the truth, not just the hype. This channel is all about pulling back the curtain on celebrity interviews, unreleased stories, and the narratives the industry doesn't want you to hear. So if you want more deep dives into moments like this, the ones that shaped music history in ways you didn't see, make sure you subscribe now because the stories only get deeper from here. When we look back at the 1990s, it's tempting to think of the East Coast-West Coast feud as inevitable, as if it was written in stone. But it wasn't. It was written by men in offices, men with contracts, men who profited from every headline and every tragedy. Suge Knight was one of them, but he wasn't alone. Media outlets played their part, spinning neutral stances into scandals, turning rumors into wars. And all the while, artists were left to navigate a minefield that didn't exist until someone else built it. Tupac didn't survive it. Biggie didn't survive it. And the industry kept moving, profiting, and rewriting the story. That's why the bond between Kane and Tupac matters so much. It's proof that the narratives we were sold aren't the full truth. It's a reminder to question the headlines, to look beyond the hype, and to listen to the artists themselves. Kane and Pac weren't enemies, they were allies who understood each other in ways the industry never wanted us to see. And in a world that thrives on conflict, that respect might be the most radical truth of all. So what do you think? Was the East Coast-West Coast rivalry truly a war? Or was it just the industry's most dangerous marketing campaign? Drop your thoughts below, and when you're done, check out the next story waiting for you on this channel, because the headlines never told you everything. But here, we do.